You're listening to Southeast Radio's Business Matters with Karl Fitzpatrick in association with Wexford Insurances. Challenge us at Wexford Insurances 0818 31 30 30.
But we're going to start this morning's show with an interview that I recorded earlier this week with Enda McDonnell, Regional Manager of Enterprise Ireland. I started by asking Enda about their recently launched Potential Exporters division within Enterprise Ireland, and this is what he had to say.
The Potential Exporters division, I suppose, is trying to reach out to companies that, number one, Enterprise Ireland mightn't have dealt with in the past, or companies that might have never exported before, or companies that were exporting but stopped in the context of the boom. And it's very much about trying to provide capability building programs and different supports to reach out to those companies to try and reorientate them away from the domestic market out to international markets. It's not the easiest thing in the world to do that. I think what a lot of companies forget is, in terms of time and in terms of money, the resources that are required to break into new markets, even if it's relatively close like the UK, to get into particular customers. It can be quite a long process. And part of what we're trying to do here is, given the way the domestic market is, given the fact that there are opportunities overseas, is to ensure that companies, and Wexford companies in particular, I suppose can build their capabilities on the island before they go to the expense and invest the quite substantial resources in some cases in terms of time and money that they need to really try and break into markets overseas.
And on that basis, talk me through some of the supports that are available through the Potential Exporters division.
Well, everything we do is about exports because that's the mandate that we have. But to be able to export successfully and sell in overseas markets, you need to be able to sell, number one. You need to have excellent products, number two. You need to look at your whole processes. You need to look at your management team. You need to look at your own capability as a CEO. So when we talk about exporting, it's not just a matter of exporting. It's about all those different requirements that customers in overseas markets require from Irish companies and Wexford companies to be successful. I suppose for the Potential Exporters division is very much about capability building. From our perspective, what we've tried to do is we've tried to move as much information online as possible, so companies can easily access type of information, basic information that they need online through our website. For example, diagnostic tools. We have a help desk now that's available, numbers on the website, for anybody that's thinking about trying to export and wondering what to do and don't know the right questions to ask. There's a helpline available at this stage. We've also run quite a number of capability building programs. We ran, for example, in Wexford about 2 or 3 weeks ago, a Get Ready Export seminar in the county hall there, and we've quite a good turnout for that. So there's a broader issue in terms of all elements of the business plan that companies need to be able to address if they want to sustainably export. But when you're starting out, there's some more fundamental questions, and that's essentially trying to help companies think through where they're at in terms of their own export journey, what they need to do, whether they're ready to do that, and what kind of resources they might require.
Yeah, what would you say to business owners that are listening to today's programme and saying, well, they couldn't support a company like mine?
I think the key issue from our perspective is that we do have a mandate to work with manufacturing and internationally traded services companies. But when we ran that event in Wexford, it was an open invitation. We didn't preclude any particular company in terms of the sector they're in or in terms of the size of the company. So I think that's important. I think more fundamentally, though, it's one thing to run a seminar, but what we tried to do and follow up on that was to run specific class-based programs over 2 days for any companies, regardless of size, that wanted to sign up for it. And certainly if Enterprise Ireland got the feedback that there's more Wexford companies that would like us to do something similar again, we'd be very happy to try and run something again in the future. There is that perception out there. Yes, we are focused on manufacturing and internationally traded services, and generally it is for companies that are employing over 10, but there are supports out there. There's a lot of information that's on our website now, for example. Secondly, our innovation voucher programme is focused on small companies employing between 1 and 49 people, and that's a resource that could be utilised by a lot of companies that they don't necessarily think that they're eligible for, but in actual fact it could be a real help to them based on where they're at the moment. And the other thing is we do work really closely with the local county enterprise boards, the city and county enterprise boards. For example, Enterprise Ireland would have representatives on both the boards and the evaluation committees of those. So we're in a position to guide depending on where the company is at their particular stage of development. I suppose, Karl, the key point is that there's always support out there, whether it's Enterprise Ireland can help or the county enterprise boards or maybe another body, and it's our responsibility to ensure that those companies are guided towards those supports based on their need and based on where they are at their particular stage of development.
In relation to the particular stage of development, are you interested in speaking to startups?
Absolutely. I think Richard Bruton has come out with quotes in terms of where the majority of jobs created over the last 5 years have come from, and it's generally startups or certainly companies that are in their 5 and around between 1 and 5 years in existence. Startups is a particular challenge in the southeast compared to other parts of the country, and it is something that we really need to address collectively. For example, we've got a huge, really good resource for Wexford companies and companies throughout the southeast in terms of IT Carlow and WIT. They do fantastic work in terms of incubating startups. So they'll be, IT Carlow, for example, I think will be advertising for their New Frontiers programme at the minute, and WIT will be doing so from September onwards. And that's where Enterprise Ireland, in conjunction with all the IoTs, provide €15,000 as a bursary. So an entrepreneur with a really innovative idea can focus purely on that idea, but not only that, can be incubated in one of the either WIT or IT Carlow and really focus on bringing their business plan to fruition over about 6 months. The other issue that we really need to focus in on is kind of outreach. How do we reach, for example, Wexford people that happen to be working in Dublin, happen to be working in New York, and see if we can kind of attract them back, so that the likes of ourselves that have the supports available for good people with innovative ideas can hold them within Wexford or within the South East generally. So there's a real push on at the minute to really drive entrepreneurship in the South East and nationally, and that's something I think collectively we can focus in on. But the resources are there and the programmes and the infrastructure is there.
Just to move back a step in relation to the sectors that you do support, from my experience and the business people I speak to, they all seem to think that it's just manufacturing businesses that are supported by Enterprise Ireland. Now, you also support internationally traded services, because that's quite a broad term. What exactly is an internationally traded service?
It's an extraordinarily broad term, because it can be anything from, exports aren't just stuff that you put in a box anymore. And internationally traded services is just not about software, for example. It's about, for example, in Enterprise Ireland, we would fund anything from Irish insurance companies or Irish innovative insurance brokers trying to break into the overseas markets. Fund managers, for example, can be described as an internationally traded service. Education service can be described as an internationally traded service. It's a very broad term, so a lot actually fits within it. So from our own perspective, what we're trying to do is reach out to those type of sectors and that are actually focused on expanding in overseas markets. I do think there's an issue maybe in terms of labels. We have a tendency, I think, generally to put labels on different companies because they happen to be in a particular sector. From our perspective, it's about good people doing really good work in really good innovative companies and trying to expand with the ambitions to grow. So whether that's kind of so-called manufacturing, which in this environment or previously manufacturing was looked at as something that was bad as compared to some software which was new and innovative, we find the more traditional, so-called traditional companies that are operating in so-called traditional sectors are actually some of the most innovative. So I think the key point is to kind of for individuals to figure out where their company is and what they want to achieve. And if they're trying to export off the market, there are supports there and there's helps that Enterprise Ireland can provide.
So Enda, what message would you like to give out to business owners listening to the show this morning that would have it in the back of their mind that exporting might be the thing that they need to do to lift their business to the next stage?
I think regardless of what stage of development you're at, it's fundamentally about having a conversation. It's about seeing kind of where we might be in a position to support regardless of the stage of development you're at. I mean, a lot of the conversations we have with entrepreneurs, for example, would be around their potential idea. And very often that might be a Me Too idea. But we're not just interested in the idea, we're interested in the promoter themselves, because we see that as potential. And we feel that there's the ability there that with a little bit of guidance, either through the CEBs or ourselves, hooking up with a mentor to kind of challenge some of the ideas that they have and help them to articulate those ideas, then certainly that's something we can do. So it's all about a conversation. There's always support out there for companies that are ambitious. It might not necessarily be Enterprise Ireland. There's things we can do and there's things we can't do. and there's things we should do and there's things we shouldn't do. But it's all about a conversation and then trying to ensure that the best path for that company or for that startup or for that entrepreneur, that we can have that conversation and guide them through it.
Am I right by saying that when a potential client does arrive at the door of Enterprise Ireland, when Enterprise Ireland are, I suppose, evaluating the opportunity and the business plan and the sustainability of the business itself, that they're firstly looking at the quality of the entrepreneur in front of them, followed by the product or service they're offering, and then thirdly looking at the market opportunity?
Yeah, it's all about the promoter and it's all about the idea, and ultimately it's about the promoter. That's why we run a programme like New Frontiers in conjunction with IT, Carlo and WIT. Individuals will come forward with half-formed ideas. And the idea behind programmes like that is around helping that promoter and that potential entrepreneur develop the idea further. But fundamentally what we're taking the chance on is, in a context like that, is not the idea. It's the promoter, because ideas will develop and go in different angles, but if you don't have the promoter with the capability to develop that idea or to bring it back or take another route, then fundamentally we're probably wasting our time. So it is about the promoter, it is about the idea, but ultimately we start with the promoter and take it from there.
Enda, Enterprise Ireland have over 1,000 active client companies across the country. From your insights, what sectors are performing well?
Well, in total, there's in the region of about 150,000 people employed directly amongst exporting companies in Ireland, which is actually more or less the same number that's employed by multinationals. A lot of people kind of forget about that. And in terms of the amount that's spent in the economy by those particular companies, is in the region of about 19 billion. So it's quite a stimulus package. What we've seen in recent years is the companies that we've worked with have emerged from the carnage of 2008 and 2009. In 2009, the exports from the companies that we support fell by 12%, which is unprecedented in any country. And not only have they regained those exports, they're actually at record exports last year and topped it off this year again. So, some sectors have different challenges than others. Fundamentally, what we see at the moment is internationally traded services are growing exponentially. Food is continuing to drive on, but even within manufacturing. Because what we've seen is that companies have come through the recession and they hung on to their staff as best they could. They had to get as lean as possible just to stay in business. And they're starting to reap that now. So I'd be quite confident about most sectors and most subsectors. It isn't just around the software or life sciences. It's about more traditional manufacturing, for example. Certainly food continues to grow across all the kind of subsectors. Some sectors will continue to decline. We've been focused on trying to kind of reorientate consumer retail, for example. So some are doing better than others. But fundamentally, from our perspective, we've actually seen growth across all of them.
Now, looking, I suppose, if you were sitting in the chair of somebody out there today that's unemployed, that has an entrepreneurial spirit and wants to set up a business and is thinking big, thinking internationally, what particular sector would you be considering?
Oh, it's the idea more than the sector. It's the potential within the sector. There's no magic answers on this one. What I'd be suggesting is that individuals would focus in on those areas that they're comfortable with, that they've got knowledge in, and that they feel that they have the capability to grow and develop. We'd never look at a particular startup in any particular sector and kind of prejudge it. Like I say, it's all about the promoter themselves, and then it depends on how realistic they are, what their own capabilities are to bring that company forward. Not everybody is going to have kind of capabilities in all the necessary areas. We would work with a lot of people that would be more technically minded, for example, in terms of their company, but they have to develop their sales capability and their management capability. There'd be others then from a startup perspective that might have a sales background with an idea, but they don't have the technical capability. They need to learn how to build teams. They need to focus in on kind of lean processing and all those areas. So from our perspective, it's about the promoter and it's about the idea regardless of the sector, and then trying to ensure that the company and the startup develops in a sustainable way. Critically for us, a lot of companies from a startup perspective tend to grow too fast. They build the expectations of their customers too quickly, and after that they're just running to try and keep up. It's a very staged approach as far as we're concerned. We've seen too many companies in terms of the environment that we've come from in terms of the growth that we had, it wasn't sustainable. What we're focusing in here on is helping the entrepreneur to build their own capabilities so they can build the companies in whatever sector in a sustainable and managed way.
Enda, earlier on in the interview you mentioned the New Frontiers programme. Firstly, tell us what that's about, and secondly, how can it benefit entrepreneurs in the South East?
Well, the New Frontiers programme, it is evolved from the Enterprise Platform programme that was run by many of the IoTs throughout the country. And it's quite innovative in terms of what it does, because it takes entrepreneurs at the earliest stage in terms of the idea that they have, and basically provides them with the environment and the funding that they can focus in on that idea. The key issue from our perspective is when you get the raw entrepreneur with a raw idea, that over the 6 months they come out of the 6-month programme, which they're incubated in WIT and IT Carlow, for example, and they come out with an investor-ready business plan. That they're almost at that stage where they can go in front of reference customers or first customers. That they're at that stage where they can look to start the process of maybe raising funding to underpin the type of activities that they're doing. It's a really practical, challenging type of programme. It's really intensive, and I think the IT Carlow are advertising currently. So I'd encourage any entrepreneur in the South East region to ask WIT and IT Carlow, look at the websites and see if I have a business idea. Maybe I've given up my job recently. Maybe I'm willing to take a secondment to work full time, and it provides that both the funding and the incubation space for people just to really focus in on their ideas. Now, it is competitive in nature. There's different phases. What we're looking for is innovative ideas. But if those innovative ideas are there and the promoter is suitable enough and has that kind of background, then it's an excellent way just to take 6 months where there are some supports to keep the entrepreneurs, that they can really focus in on that idea.
I've often encouraged listeners that are business owners to apply for the Enterprise Ireland Innovation Vouchers over the last year and a half on the show. And Pat Lynch tells me from Rycon that lots of them are, but a whole pile more could be. Now, I suppose the Innovation Voucher, in my mind, would be the first step in somebody considering the export market and carrying out the first little bit of market research. But I have one question for you in relation to that. For those that do apply and are successful in obtaining an innovation voucher, and they get the project completed, let's say by Rycon or TSSG or whoever else, is there a follow-up call made by Enterprise Ireland to that company 6 or 12 months later to see have they implemented that information or that result from the research that is being completed?
Well, the innovation voucher is a fairly simple mechanism. It's worth about €5,000. But when you've issued nationwide in the region of about 4,000 innovation vouchers at 5,000 each, that adds up to quite a considerable amount of money. So there is follow-up in terms of the evaluation of the impact that the vouchers actually having, both internally within Enterprise Ireland and externally as well. We do follow up. We find the innovation vouchers as a very simple mechanism. First of all, to try and demystify and again start the conversation with the likes of ourselves in a very simple kind of way. And secondly, to have companies, and small companies obviously, to link in with third level institutes, both north and south of the border, that otherwise they would never have under their own steam. And that's the value of the voucher as far as we're concerned. Yes, what we're looking for is tangible projects that have a demonstrable difference within the company to their bottom line. But there's so much more to the voucher than that, because there's a huge resource there with regard to the IoTs and the universities. And essentially we just want as many eligible companies, and most companies would be eligible, small companies would be eligible to apply for the voucher. Again, it's about having a conversation. Again, it's trying to define what a particular project they want to achieve. That's somewhat innovative. This is not for off-the-shelf solutions. This is not for something that maybe companies would be doing anyway. This is to try and add a little bit more value over and above what they've done to date, and just start them thinking, for example, in terms of research and development, or if they are looking at an overseas market and are a services company and require a technology platform, and to think about what kind of technology platforms they need to support their sales activities. This is how we kind of link everything together. So I'd encourage as many companies, small companies as possible, to think about utilising the resources that are on their doorstep, whether it be IT Carlow or WIT in terms of the innovation vouchers. It's just the first step it can make such a difference. And it's all about changing minds, changing perceptions about what companies can achieve. For us, the success is not just having the voucher and then that's it. For us, the success is if the voucher leads companies on to further supports that Enterprise Ireland can provide, or the CEBs can provide, or the IoTs or universities can provide. And that's the fundamental aim of the innovation vouchers.
The message is quite loud and clear, and it's the door is open wide, and you want to hear from businesses across County Wexford and further afield if they have any ideas in relation to exporting. Absolutely.
The supports from the state are there. We want to hear from companies. We want to hear the challenges that they're having, what they require, and if Enterprise Ireland can't help, then we can try and guide towards the supports that are suitable for their particular stage of development.
You're listening to South East Radio's Business Matters with Karl Fitzpatrick in association with Wexford Insurances. Think Wexford Insurances for your business insurance.